Lead from the Side is made in partnership with Performance Leadership, a co-venture of Western Bulldogs and Victoria University. Hi, I'm Spencer Casimir, and this is Lead from the Side. Today's guest is Jeremey Edwards, COO of Asia Pacific Rugby League. He was promoted to his current role after his success as the tournament director of the 2017 Rugby League World Cup. Previously, Jeremey has held sports administration roles with the Sydney and Beijing Olympics, and most recently, the London Olympics and Paralympics as the venue general manager of Greenwich Park. Jeremey has also been employed as a sports consultant by the International Olympic Committee in Nanjing, China. Jeremey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Spencer. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
So let's start out with what's on the horizons for Asia Pacific in rugby league.
Well, we're currently involved at the moment. We've got a couple of really interesting tournaments coming up that we're working very closely with the National Rugby League. We've got some of our Pacific Tests to be held in October and November this year. Post the NRL Grand Final, we'll see Australia and New Zealand and Samoa play in one pool, and in another pool we'll see Fiji, PNG and the Cook Islands play. And those matches will be played up in Papua New Guinea. So very exciting times. And then straight after that, we roll straight into the Pacific Games in Solomon Island, which is a nines tournament for both men and women. Really excited about that. That'll roll us through to the end of November. In fact, I'm up in Honiara next week doing a final venue walkthrough and doing some coaching courses and medical courses and that sort of stuff for the volunteers. So hopefully that'll get through by the end of November and then roll into a bit of a admin mop-up for December, a couple of AGMs and that sort of stuff, and then Christmas break and New Year break.
So for those that aren't familiar, rugby league is extremely popular amongst the Pacific Islanders, Australia, and New Zealand. But Asia Pacific is a very large region, much further beyond that. What sort of growth and what sort of stability are we seeing in terms of the rest of that region? Because you go all the way from the Middle East through East Asia and South Asia.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. When I first started in the National Federation, we had two confederations. We had Europe and Asia Pacific. And Asia Pacific's boundaries were a little bit what I would call rubbery at that stage. So I always said, South Africa to South America were the areas that I was looking after. Since I've been involved, we've now had another confederation start, which is Middle East Africa. So South Africa's gone to them. So we're actually experiencing quite a lot of growth at the moment within Asia. Philippines very active. Japan has come on board, talking to Hong Kong at the moment. And we've certainly got rugby league being played in Cambodia, Thailand, and in those parts of Asia. India is always bubbling around there. We've always got, an organisation putting their hand up saying we want to be the governing body for rugby league in India and that sort of stuff. India being such a vast country like Australia, it's very hard to coordinate that, to give one body access across such a vast landmass. So what we're seeing at the moment, especially within Asia, is that we're seeing the dominance of coming out of the Australian-based Asian communities. So Philippines down here are playing a lot of rugby league, but predominantly with Australian-based Filipinos. What we're trying to do, or what the Filipinos are trying to do, and they're doing quite well at the moment, is getting the sport going in the Philippines and actually being able to bring representatives from the country to play in Australia down here, to be able to give them more exposure to the sport. So with this, Spencer, what comes with this is it's costly to do this. And, trying to rely on government assistance and also recognition from their Olympic committees and that sort of stuff. But we're working very closely with those countries, giving them referee, coaching courses and those sort of things to support their growth.
What fascinates me about this growth is that the rules of rugby league mean that it is much more cardiovascularly intensive than rugby union.
Yeah.
To me, that makes the game more playable to more people because not everybody can field a rugby union forward. Is that something in terms of physiology that the game looks at?
Yeah, it's certainly a very interesting point you raise, about the size of the player or the mobility of the player. Back when I played a little bit of league and predominantly rugby union, the forwards were very big and there was plenty of time to rest with a scrum and a line out and all that sort of stuff, and the backs did the running. I think the game now, because the forwards are more mobile and it's much more of a running game, I think it's quite an exciting game now as well. Fitness clearly does play a big part in it. And I think, we've seen today that big people can run. The Pacific Islanders are a classic case of that. But I think as the rules continue to evolve in the game, I think it's good to be able to see the fast pace of rugby league these days. I think it's very entertaining. See big players like, you look at a guy like Payne Huss, plays for the Broncos. There's quite a number of those big guys. I really like the pace of it. It's really exciting for the game.
So speaking of the international world and whatnot, from a Pacific perspective, how does this new international schedule look in terms of the next Rugby League World Cup will also be men's, women, and wheelchair under one roof, but then it's going to break up into separate World Cups in the future? Is this good from an Asia Pacific perspective? Is it detrimental? Is it just different?
I think it's a really great idea. I mean, I was over in England at the end of last year working on the World Cup. There was a huge amount of cricket. It was a great tournament, but at the end of it, we were all just absolutely cooked. So I think getting it back to 10 is an interesting number. I'm not sure what the magical number is. Is it more than 10, less than 14? I'm not sure. But I think, we're very fortunate down here that we have a number of teams that are pre-qualified for league. I like the concept, where the nations will be playing for those last two divisions. I like that. I think that's more, it's really going to be a very competitive competition. Personally, I do like the fact that the World Cups can stand alone. We've seen here for the Women's Soccer World Cup, what a great following the women's sport got out of that. So I think having the women stand on their own is a really interesting thing. It gives them an opportunity to commercialise that sport as well. So the men are commercialised, the women are. And I really like the wheelchair. My Olympic experience was all about equestrian, where men and women compete as equal. And in the wheelchair, that men and women can compete there on the field together, which I think is a really cool thing. I really like that. I think that's a really great thing to do. And again, commercialising it, showcasing the sport. And I think here in the Pacific, we probably will find indoor infrastructure where with very little cost we can convert that into a wheelchair arena. And also we have large Pacific Island communities that are here in Australia that also can take advantage of the infrastructure that we have here in Australia. So all in all, I think we can really get this going. I think the biggest cost that we'll come up against is obviously the cost of buying the wheelchair, really not cheap. And we need to have a number of those wheelchairs because we need to start off from a very low base where we're having to come and have a trial games and see how that works. But also freighting the wheelchairs around is also not a cheap aspect here as well. The size of the aircraft that we use to fly in the Pacific Islands are not massive aircraft. So I think, we could end up, infrastructure-wise, costs of wheelchairs, having them housed in maybe in Australia or New Zealand and other Pacific nations would be quite expensive. But having said all that, I think there's enough people that want to play the wheelchair rugby league. You've only got to look at what happened in 2022 at the World Cup at the grand final. The size of the crowd, the hype, the razzle-dazzle around it was really great. So I think to have 3 World Cups that stand on their own commercially, I think it's a really exciting thing because it absolutely showcases that particular sport 100%.
Want to develop your leadership potential this October? Join the Western Bulldogs and Victoria University for Performance Leadership, a 2-day program offering unparalleled insight into leading in dynamic, high-performance environments. Places for the October 5th and 6th intake are limited, so prospective attendees are encouraged to visit education.westernbulldogs.com.au to register interest today. The counter-argument is that the camaraderie that the men, the women, and the wheelchairs are sharing together is interrupted, and a lot of people aren't fans of that, so I have to obviously bring that point up too. Sure. But clearly from a back-end perspective, it is quite intensive to have 3 separate competitions going on at the same time. But this is a leadership show. We've got to talk about your leadership.
Yeah.
Tell us something about being COO that other people wouldn't know unless you've been in that position.
This is a really interesting role. I have a very good relationship with a lot of our governing bodies in the nation. I think for me, keeping that relationship going and keeping it healthy and positive, making sure that I'm in touch with my members, keeping them up to date with what's going on, listening to them is very important for me, I think, to understand their needs. But I guess the big one is understanding the culture to all the countries that I have to work in. And I think if I can understand some of the culture, but I think for me, it's probably juggling the guys from hearing from the international body what their rules and regulations are and transposing that down to members and being that person that leverages between the two. That's really important. But I mean, the day-to-day work is, I'm dealing with people that are the ultimate leaders in the body and also some of the people that are turning up on game day that do the volunteer work. And I think all that sort of stuff is really important. and to be seen. I like to try and travel to the nation as much as I can. If I could get there 6-7 times a year, I would. Nothing beats a face-to-face meeting and sitting down and listening and talking to the nations, but also trying to help them to improve. I mean, we do as much work now off-field as what we do as on-field. So, going to their AGMs, helping them, support them through governance issues, financial issues, accountability, all those massive amount of headings that are out there at the moment.
How is the COO role different than that of a CEO in that capacity?
I like to sort of treat my colleagues as we're all on the same level. I report to the chairman and the vice chairman of Asia Pacific, Sanders Tasker, who's the chairman of Asia Pacific, who's Papua New Guinean, and Greg Peters is the vice chairman, who's New Zealander. Both of them, their day jobs are rugby league. And I think for me, I would look to them as more as the chairman, but also as probably the CEO. And I think I've gleaned a lot from what they do. We've got 3 different cultures in the room and 3 very vastly different personalities in the room as well. So I like to think that they're very much involved in my day-to-day work as well. I like to tell them what I'm doing, clearly articulate what I'm doing, but also I never like to take a problem to them that I don't sort of have an answer for or a suggestion. They may not always agree with my suggestion, but I worked with a guy many, many years ago who used to say, never bring me a corpse. Bring me something with a bit of life into it, and I can help you breathe a bit of life into it. So that's where I like to think that we try and get, if I might have an issue, and I'll go to them and I say, well, this is what I want to do with it, and then we can build from there. Sometimes I'll agree, sometimes I won't agree. But I think having that open communication is really important, and having respect for each other to make sure that everybody's being heard and everybody's being listened. And some of the best ideas, I always say, are born pretty ugly sometimes.
Tell me a bit about leading the team through the trenches, through the tough times, because we did have the tough times, and you're bringing people out of it now.
It's a good question. I think, because we do a lot of work with stakeholders, so, NRL is a big part of our operation as well. We do a lot of work with the guys at NRL. This morning I've already been on a call with New Zealand Rugby League. I've got some other calls this afternoon with the other nations. I think it's probably trying to, as I always say, try not to look in the revision mirror, try and look forward. Yes, COVID was a tough time and we've all suffered. But now it's the time to look forward, and it's exciting what's ahead of us. Change is always a good thing. I like a bit of change. A lot of people don't like change, but I think there's some really exciting things to look forward to. And I think if we try, with the teams that I work in, and I work with people that wholly and solely are on field and wholly and solely that are off field. If we can give some excitement to the people, some energy to the people that work on field projects, and some of the energy to the people that work on off field, the thought of, organising a governance review workshop for a nation may leave a lot of people cold. For the people that work in that field, it's really exciting for them to be able to do that. I mean, part of my trip to the Solomon Islands next week, we're going with the NRL and the Australian Defence Force, we're a big partner of them, and we're doing some coach education, some match official education, and some medical education, and we're taking, subject matter experts in the field to the Solomon Islands, and we've got about 25 people that are joining these courses, and that's really exciting that we'll be able to do that. Be able to give leadership to the people, and we can leave a legacy behind. We'll have level 1 coaches, level 1 referees, people that will have a basic medical training. We'll be giving them medical kits and that sort of stuff. That in itself is a really exciting time to be able to show to the sport that this is what we can do to assist them. 2-3 weeks ago, we were up in PNG doing the same sort of thing. It's really amazing. So helping them come along and saying, right, forget about what happened a couple of years ago. It's over. Let's look forward and go forward.
I always felt rugby league is a phenomenal sport for all defense forces because there is that cardio output. There is that fitness that's required. I've always been surprised that more defense forces don't pick up on it as their code of choice.
What it also does bring, Spencer, which is really a very big part of our game, is discipline. We were very fortunate to fly on some of the military aircraft, and whether Defence Force guys were Air Force or Army, they travelled with their uniform. It was yes sir, no sir. Everyone was on time. No one was late. And I think that's a really good part of leadership to show that, the meeting starts at 9 o'clock. Everybody's in the room at 5 to 9. Lunch is at 12. We're going to break at 12. Plane leaves at 6. We're at the plane at 5:30. These are the sort of things that I think that this is a really good part of instilling discipline that the military does bring and that sort of stuff. And despite that, they're great people. They're lovely people to work with, and nothing's a problem. And they're there for the right reasons because they want to do some change.
What's one of the biggest differences between when you started and now? What's the biggest difference that you've noticed about your leadership?
I think there's probably a number of things. With time comes, I suspect, confidence. And I think, once you build relationships, I always like to have a good relationship with people. I never like to be abused in front of somebody, but someone wants to take me aside, they can say what they want. I think one-on-one like that, it's quite good. It allows people to get something off their chest. Look, I think the relationship side of things that I've built up with people from a volunteer right through to a chairman, I think is really good. As a sport, we've grown. I think we're evolving. There's excitement there. I think it's certainly changing, making sure the board composition, the right people are in place, a bit more of an expansive mind, looking for, do we have to do everything in-house, or should we go to the market and get contractors to help us who can bring new ideas to us? I think it's opened my mind up to more opportunities to see how wide can we push this, and being more inclusive, making sure that, the women's game is evolving, the wheelchair, even the physical disability, they're all growing, and we're getting the right people involved with it. Having good relationships with media, being able to, talk to journalists and being asked questions by journalists and being able to answer that adequately. I think they're all good things. Seeing players, coming from under 16s and then all of a sudden coming onto the first grade side, that's really exciting as well. And being able to think that you were part of that platform to get in there. I know when I worked in the Olympic Games, I would have never pulled on the green and gold, and I was never going to win a gold medal. But I certainly, the little bit that I did contribute, helped somebody to win a gold medal, that's really important.
I think the big question for you right now, and there's two left, is when you have to have that conversation with somebody who's working under you, what's your approach?
Not sure, actually. I think to have people working underneath you, I like to listen to everybody. I like to hear what they have to say. I don't always agree with it, but I think giving people a platform to be able to speak, having a bit of social interaction with them as well. I know my father used to always say, never leave the workman at the back gate. He might have been for beer. Having an interaction, listening to them, realising that, we're all not cut from the same cloth, we're all different individuals, and people can contribute in fantastic ways. People can do all kinds of really cool things, and, little pieces all make up a bigger jigsaw. In my role, I don't think I've got all the answers, and I like to listen and hear people's point of view. So I think providing a platform that people can speak is very important.
Great way to segue to the final question. If you have any good leadership advice that you wish you knew sooner in your career, what would it be?
I'm teaching at school, I think. Always be nice to the girl's mother. They'll always look after you a lot better there, I think. But I'm not sure, really. I think we as human beings, and I know myself, you evolve, and I think the situation that you're in, you either evolve into that situation or you evolve out of it. I know I've got some fantastic mentors in this space of rugby league, and some of these guys have become some, really dear friends of mine. They haven't always been gentle to me. They've certainly, called it how it is. But these people that I really respect, and I think for people that are in leadership roles today, it's listening to both sides of the argument and trying to formulate your views, not being sort of so hard-nosed about things. Listen, understand. And I think some of the greatest people that I've worked with have been people that have just really got it. And when I mean by got it, they've just understood what their role is and what they've had to do. Being around people that are ambitious is a really good thing. And being around people that are exciting and want to move on and do things is really exciting. So for me, I'm not sure whether I have what I would have changed things any differently. I fell into this career in a lot of ways. I was from the land and I was due to go back home and be a good old country boy, and life didn't play out that way. And I got into this and I found it really exciting to be around elite sportsmen, to be part of something and be able to contribute to creating world champions and gold medalists. And that was a really fun thing.
That's a great way to end the show. So a big thank you to Jeremey again for being on the show. You can follow Jeremey and the organizations he is associated with at Asia Pacific Rugby League on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Jeremey, again, thank you for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you for having me. And it's great that you guys have got so many listeners now and you guys are doing these. They're really quite interesting and they're quite fun to listen to. So well done.
Thanks for listening today, and thanks to our sponsors. More information about the show and our guests can be found in the show notes. You can follow the show on Twitter or LinkedIn at Lead From The Side, or myself on Twitter or LinkedIn at BallsOutPhD. If you want to contribute to the show, send us an email at leadfromtheside@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next time, and remember to lead from the side.